ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with the Artsmith. Today I want to make a video where recently, a couple of days ago, there's a few papers released about Mars quakes, and over the decades, more and more Mars quakes have been, um, detected. Like, with all the instruments which are on Mars, which detect, geological activity or whatnot. And recently, in the past, it's like 5 or 6 years, the amount of Mars quakes has gone through the roof. Basically, that's the basic way of me saying is the Mars quakes. Basically, Mars has become so active in these Mars quakes where, it's gotten a lot of people scratching their heads. Because Mars, we first thought, oh, Mars is dead. It's got a dead core. It's got dead everything like that. And then we started to think, well, is it really? And then we saw that Mars's outer core was first semi-molten, and then we realized it was completely molten. And recently we've discovered that Mars's core is around 25 to 30% bigger than we thought it was, which is insanely big. I mean, right now, the simulations haven't been updated, but Mars's inner core is 10% the mass, but 30% bigger. That it will go up to like 13 to 15%, and just to show you how big that is, like, that's 10%. What's that? So that's 15%, but the outer core is a lot bigger than we first thought. For example, when we looked at Earth's core, we realized, hang on a minute, the Earth's core is so much bigger than we first thought. That's the same for Mars. I think they're doing the same thing for Venus as well. They're studying Venus and whatnot, and a lot of information is coming out about Venus. For example, they think they may have found actual evidence of a volcano exploding on Venus, not exploding, erupting, sorry, which is really good news. But about Mars, I had a thought about it. I thought, well, could it be that Mars goes through this sort of cycle where, for like, between 100 million to like a couple of 10 million years, Mars is wet, and warm and whatnot. So Mars is wet and warm for quite a while, but then it kind of, like, Mars kind of goes into more of a, like, almost like a sleeping period where Mars goes to sleep. So Mars stops erupting, stops creating atmosphere, stops generating magnetic field, and just sleeps. Could it be that we are seeing the first stages of Mars waking up, where Mars is having more earthquakes? Hell, there's even images of brand new cracks appearing on the surface. And the most intriguing spot is, I think it's around this area here, probably a little bit more to the equator, but this area over here, roughly here, there's actually a couple of heat points. One of them is around here, I believe. Is around here. Sorry, my mouse is playing up, so it's a little bit dodgy, but it's around here. And what they noticed is when they were analyzing the earthquakes, was normally on Earth, when you analyze an earthquake, you have an earthquake goes off, it creates pressure waves. Normally, pressure waves from earthquakes go slower the hotter material is. And what they realized is, the pressure waves were going far slower than they first thought. They, obviously they're thinking, hang on a minute, something's not right here. The pressure waves are going far too slow. There's through. But the second reason was, or the second thing was, they realized that the boundary inside Mars, where these pressure waves were going a lot slower, was a lot bigger than they first thought. That's when they started to come up with these papers, suggesting that Mars's core is a lot bigger. It may even be 50% to 75% bigger than what we first thought. So when you think about it, 75%, it's like, instead of being 10%, the inner core is probably like 18%, and then the outer core is probably maybe even half the percentage of Mars. Which, if that's the case, that's a really, really, really big molten mass inside the planet. There is one thing about Mars, is Mars has a lot of sulfur within its core. Sulfur stops the production of magnetic fields. So it could be the fact that because Mars has been quiet for a long time, Mars has built up this sulfur, and then it's going to get to a point where it's going to get so pressurized, where because right now the magma inside Mars, and we know there's magma inside Mars, we know that, we just don't know how much there is. We know that there's a lot, there's a massive amount, and now that we can confirm that Mars's core is significantly bigger than we first thought, there's obviously a lot more down there than we first thought. But it's probably going to come to a point where Mars's volcanoes, and for volcanoes, I don't really believe that that's just the only volcanoes. For example, this looks like an impact crater, but at the same time it looks like a caldera volcano, so something like Yellowstone. And then of course you got a few others. Of course there's impact craters and whatnot, but you got another one here that looks like a volcano. That's a crater, obviously. But then you got that again, that's probably a dune. You got, you've probably got volcanoes all over the place. But also Mars's atmosphere has been very slowly, very gradually, but very slowly getting thicker. Which is a bit odd, because, there shouldn't be any outgassing coming out from the planet. Unless Mars is geologically active, which, more and more of the signs are appearing that Mars is definitely geologically active. Mars definitely is alive. That people are now suggesting, oh, why don't we move one of the gas giant's moons and put it in orbit around Mars? That could work, but most of the moons in the outer solar system are made of ice. You'd be very lucky if you can find a moon which is made mostly out of rock. You could move something like Io. Io would be very hard to move, very hard. But anyway, not talking about that, we're talking about Mars. The other thing is Mars is having auroras, like actual auroras. There hasn't been any photographs, but from how excited the scientists and astro whatever they're called, the people who study planets, planetary scientists, they are very excited. Mars is having auroras, which would suggest Mars has right now most likely a weak, fully fledged magnetic field. Which, if that's the case, then back in the when you had Viking and whatnot going to Mars, they didn't really detect any magnetic field. But now we are possibly seeing the reactivation of Mars, which is absolutely shocking. It is like we are probably seeing a planet turn on. Like a planet is turning on in front of our eyes. A planet is coming to life in front of our eyes. This is the best time to be alive. And it's probably not just Mars. It probably is not just Mars. For example, Venus should have lost probably all of its atmosphere by now. But it hasn't. Venus is actually gaining atmosphere, which is interesting as well. Which would suggest that Venus probably has a weak core, weak magnetic field, which is interesting. Because when they first sent a spacecraft to Venus, they didn't detect any sort of magnetic field. They probably, I don't believe they had a magnetometer, I think that's what it's called. I probably don't know the name of it, but it detects magnetic fields. But to know the fact that Mars is not only having more Mars quakes, not only has it been confirmed that it has a far larger core than we first thought, not only is the atmosphere getting thicker gradually over time, not only is it having auroras, but there are also signs of water clouds. You heard me right. Water clouds on Mars. Very, very thin, but they're definitely there. Which would show Mars is also warming up. Which is... It's insane. Mars is coming alive. It's shocking. Not only is... You got Mars's core, outer core, which is far larger than we first thought. We first thought that Mars's outer core was probably a little bit molten and probably very small compared to the inner core. But now we know that Mars's outer core is vastly bigger than the inner core, which would suggest either A, Mars is nowhere near as old as we first thought, B, Mars probably recently had a massive collision with something, like probably like probably a million years ago or a couple 100,000 years ago or something like that. You know, that's recent in astronomical terms. Or C, Mars is being tidally heated by something. Now, I would think Mars, because Mars is smaller than Earth, Mars is like 10 times less massive than Earth from here. Earth is probably having some sort of gravitational effect on Mars. Same as Jupiter. Jupiter is massive. Jupiter is absolutely gigantic. It's probably on the cusp of like 1,000 times, or probably like 3,000 times the mass of Earth. Because Jupiter is 318 times the mass of Earth. But Mars is 10 times less massive than Earth, so that would mean that Jupiter is 3,000 times the mass of Mars. And that would mean that Mars has probably been under significant gravitational strain for a very long time. And it seems like this is probably enough. This has probably been enough to generate enough tidal heating to stretch and squish the core. Stretch and squish. Stretch and squish. And you're going to massage that core. You're going to make it hot. You're going to heat up the planet from the inside. That's what we're seeing. We are seeing the first evidence of Mars actually coming alive. Now, this could all be a fluke. This could all be a, we detected this, but now Mars has gone quiet. But if Mars does go quiet in the next few years, why has it gone quiet? Is it back building for massive eruption? Now, they say that when Mars does finally erupt, and you know, with that statement, with the statement that they made there, when they said when Mars does finally, which means that Mars will eventually erupt. They did say that it will probably not be as big as past eruptions. I don't believe that. I think that from all of the studies, from all of the work, from everything, from, you know, them talking about the outer core and the inner core, and how much bigger the outer core is compared to the inner core now, I believe that Mars is probably going to be vastly more geologically active than Earth in so and so years. I mean, you know, having 1,300 earthquakes, you know, big earthquakes, we're talking 4.0 and above. You know, 4.0, you will barely feel, but, you know, I think that it was like around 10 to 20% of those earthquakes were around the 5.0 range. And then like 1% of those were like 6.0 and whatnot. But 5.0 earthquakes, 4 to 5.0 earthquakes, those are huge on Mars. I mean, I believe that there was a certain mission sent to Mars in the very late 90s, like 20th century, which is 1900s. Or probably early 2000s, I'm not entirely sure. But it was sent to Mars because they wanted to test to see if Mars was geologically active. They didn't detect a single thing. Not one thing. They didn't detect one thing. I don't think that's true, actually. I think that they detected 1 or 2 earthquakes, but they are very, very small. I think they're like 3 to 4.0. Probably smaller than that. Probably in the 2.0 range. But they're very small. And now that we're detecting, you know, 1,300, you know, 1,300 earthquakes, big earthquakes per year on Mars, and they are actually increasing. And they've said that you know, at the end of 2023, we could be seeing close to 3,000 earthquakes a year, which is a ridiculous increase in earthquakes. This really shows that magma is definitely on the move inside Mars. Mars is obviously heating up on the inside at a quite alarming rate. And it shows that Mars is getting ready to blow up. Mars is not literally explode into a million pieces, but Mars is definitely getting ready for a massive geological event. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is if I go to... Is it actually in the game? No, it's not. Okay, I'm going to have to go to a separate simulation. But the other thing I want to talk about is the moon. Because I've had a few people talk to me about the moon. And they've, you know, discussed about the moon. And said that, you know, there are some weird things going on about the moon. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have you heard about multicolored lava? Now, multicolored lava, if I actually look it up real quick. Multicolored lava. So, if I put magma, yeah, rainbow. It's called rainbow lava, and it's made of like different types of materials, like silver and sulfur and whatnot. But basically, I think it was in the mid 2010s or 2000s, around that period, where there were a few people that said that they were seeing plumes of course, we're talking about the moon here, so those plumes would look quite small, but they were seeing plumes of like this multicolored dust, or like kind of like it looked like liquid. That's what they described it as, coming off of the moon. Of course, it would look extremely small, like very small, because we're talking about the moon. The moon is 3,000 kilometers across. It's absolutely gigantic. And so they sent a if I actually look it up. I can't spell. Yeah, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's in an eccentric polar mapping orbit. I believe the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, because it's in a polar orbit and it's mapping the moon, and it's in an eccentric orbit. But it comes close and it takes images, and there's a few images where you can actually see what people have been describing. Like it looks like it looks like these plumes of something coming out the moon, which we've done scans of the moon, we've done magnetic what do you call it, tests, like we've seen if the moon is magnetic. We've seen, if the moon's core is alive and whatnot, and the amount of information that's come out is the moon's core, again, just like Mars, the moon's core is a lot bigger than we first thought. B, the moon is, now this could be a shock to everybody, but the moon is very, very, very weakly magnetically active. It means it has a very, very, very weak magnetic field. And what there's I think there's 2 or 3 types of magnetic fields formed by the moon. One is where the solar wind comes and hits the moon's lit day side, and what that does is it charges the material on the moon, and it creates I think it's called a bow shock field or something like that, where it covers the front, the daylight part, the object. But you've also got a geo field where it covers the entire body. Now this is the most interesting because some scientists predict that the moon is still close enough to the Earth where the Earth is massaging the moon's interior and keeping it warm. And the moon is so warm on the inside, in fact, it is so hot on the inside, that if you took the Earth away from the moon will probably be geologically active inside for probably close to 1 billion years. Which, that sounds a bit extreme. I would reckon about 200 million years it will be, geologically active for. But hey, I'm not, a scientist. They are. But if that's the case, then that means that the moon is extremely hot on the inside. Very, very, very hot on the inside. Right now they reckon that the Earth has around 700 million years left until its magnetic field shuts down. Which I find to be a bit absurd, because when you think about it, it does sound a bit silly, but yeah, because they say that the Earth's magnetic field requires water to keep the mantle cool, which sounds a bit odd because other planets generate magnetic fields without water. For very good example, very good recent example is Mars. Mars is showing signs of having a magnetic field, even though it's got no running water. But with the moon starting to also show signs of sort of coming back from the dead, obviously it's been in this slumber period where it's been quiet for a long time. They reckon that the last time the moon actually erupted was about 70 million years ago. Basically, if you were a dinosaur and you looked up in the sky, you would have seen the moon with a couple patches of, volcanic rock, like volcanic magma and whatnot, and probably an atmosphere. But the thing is that if objects like Mars and the moon are turning back on, does that mean that other objects smaller than the moon could turn back on? I mean, with Pluto is a very, very geologically active world. I mean, that's already been stated, with all the cryovolcanoes and all the riverbeds and even the atmosphere, like the layers of atmosphere. Like, you look at the layers of atmosphere of Earth, I think Earth has around 8 or 9 layers. I don't know the exact layers, but that it's quite a lot of layers. But then you look at Pluto and you see like it's probably got like 20 to 30 layers of atmosphere, which means its atmosphere is extremely complex, which was shocking when you first saw. Now, I predict that Mars is going to become geologically active, very, very geologically active. It's going to start to build an atmosphere, and then it's going to start to rain, and it's going to be like that for probably close to 100 million years, probably longer than that, and it's going to stay like that. The moon's probably going to follow as well, but it's probably not going to last that long. It's probably going to last for probably 10 million years, where it's going to be thick atmosphere, rain, which is going to fall very slowly due to the gravitational pull of the moon. And then the moon's probably going to have, because you got to bear in mind, when the moon was born, the moon had a geofield, geo-sized magnetic field, which was from 2 times up to 6 times the strength of Earth's magnetic field, which is shocking. I mean, Earth's field didn't turn on until I think it was like 400 million years, 400 to around a billion years after it formed. That's when water first appeared on the planet. But that really shows of just how wrong we've been about celestial objects, how ridiculously stupid we've been. We thought, oh, Mars is dead, the moon's dead, Venus is dead, this is dead, that is dead, and Earth is the only planet with volcanoes and whatnot. And now we are flipping finding out that objects even as small as Pluto are as geologically active, if not more, than the Earth. And it seems like Mars and possibly the moon and possibly Venus are starting to come back online. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is Mercury. I'm going to put Mercury there. Now, Mercury is a bit of an odd planet where we have a... Are you going to merge at all? You going to merge? I'm definitely heating up. Let me just slow down the velocities. 2% more speeds. 2% more speeds again. There you go. Now you fully decked out. Oh, all velocities. Okay, so we're just gonna let Mercury cool down. Are you actually gonna fuse with the planet, or are you just gonna... Do you know what? I might just get rid of all of this. And just cool Mercury down by myself. There you go. Mercury, it's kind of lost its unique texture. But hey, Mercury, I mean, how much did this grow by? It grew by not that. Oh, it's actually got it's got part of its. Wait, is it actually getting its? Oh my god, it is. That's shocking. But yes, what was it about? Oh yes, Mercury. We strongly. We roughly strongly know that Mercury's core is mostly solidified. Of course, Mercury has a pretty strong magnetic field for its size, which would argue that, I mean, Mercury having a mostly solidified core with a pretty strong magnetic field would suggest that Mercury has a pretty molten core. Now, Mercury used to be a lot bigger. I believe that Mercury used to be... I think it used to be around the size of... I think it's a little bit smaller than Earth, like, when you think about it. If we actually compare it to Venus. It used to be around the size of Venus. If we look at Mars, yeah. So Mercury used to be this. In fact, I think it was more closer to the size of Mars, if I'm correct. So if I just decrease the size a bit more, that's more like it. So it was probably on the borderline of being like between Mars and Venus size. But Mercury could have had... Oh, I don't want to know. Go away. If we put Mercury in orbit around just a random star. Put it in orbit around a random star. There you go. So it's in orbit around a random star. So Mercury, we had a... It was probably rather Earth-like when you think about it. What I mean by that, I mean, you know, it probably had, you know, liquid water. It probably had an atmosphere. So we give it an atmosphere. Make the atmosphere... I think the atmosphere would have been like probably like purple in nature because of all the cyanobacteria. And then of course Mercury smashed into the Earth. Mercury, we know now that Mercury formed like in between of Venus and Earth. Mercury, you know, that's where Mercury formed. And then of course Mercury smashed into the Earth. Had a grazing impact, which was far more grazing than the Theia with Earth impact. And then Mercury was catapulted into the inner solar system, and that's where Mercury is now. But if Mercury would have survived, so if I opened up the system again. Oh no, thank you. So if I bring up Mercury and then made it same size as always, with a pretty large core, it probably had a larger core than normal, and it probably had a pretty quick rotation with a probably a slight obliquity to its rotation. So when you think about it, it probably looked more Earth-like than we first thought. So if we bring the water on, and then we give it an atmosphere, and then we look at its magnetic field, it should have one. We make that a little bit stronger. Okay, this is looking a lot bigger, a lot better, should I say. And then give it and then we're just going to move it out into it. There you go. So this is probably where Mercury lied between Venus and Earth. So Venus would have been the closest planet to the Sun. And this is probably what Mercury actually looked like, of course, with a blue atmosphere and whatnot. If we made the atmosphere a little bit less thick, there you go. Clouds, coverage. So yeah, it would have probably looked a little bit like this. So this is probably what Mercury used to look like. It was a far larger planet, as we can see when we compare it to Earth. Oh. No, that's the moon. If we compare it to Earth, I was just about to say there's no way it's happening. It was a far larger world. Of course, it was probably in between of Mars and Venus sized. But it was probably mostly a water world with a few islands. And of course, you know, it strayed a little bit too close to Earth and it smashed into Earth. And then it was catapulted in towards the Sun. But Mercury would have probably been the first world in the solar system to have liquid water on its surface, which is pretty interesting. So that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys is that let's see, if I have a look at realistic, does that make the Sun? Oh god. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy this video, give a thumbs down. Put in the comment section, do you find the news about Mars most likely waking up, and about, you know, Venus most likely having evidence of volcanic eruptions, and then the moon, you know, and whatnot. Do you find that exciting? I definitely do. I think it is absolutely shocking to find this evidence out. And also put in the comment section, what do you think Mars would look like I would love to see people who own Universe Sandbox or Space Engine make your own design of Mars and then show me what you think Mars would look like, even drawings. Like, I really want to see what Mars would look like. It would be pretty interesting. Anyways, I'm gonna see you later. Peace.